Hello, everyone, and welcome to the April edition of the Planet Technologies You Already Own a Community Call. I'm very excited for our call this month. Um, let's go ahead and get some things started. So your You Already Own a team is myself, Bob Ballard, George Scott, Ken Nubler, Scott Dowling, Mary Tucker, and Steve Winter under the guidance of Steve. And so don't forget, as a You Already Own It customer, you can always email the You Already Own It at go-planet.com alias to get in touch with one of my team, the cloud strategists, to help you with decisions, whatever the burning questions might be. And feel free to reach out at any time. We try to have a turnaround and at least an acknowledgement of your question within 24 hours. And if it's something we need to do a little research on, we promise to get back to you really shortly. Otherwise, we'll just sort of answer it on the spot. So feel free to reach out to the alias. It's there as one of your benefits. So I'm really excited about our call this month. And it seems like the community is as well, because we have a great crowd already building. So we are actually this month we've invited one of our great customers, the United States Military Academy, and specifically Lieutenant Colonel Christopher Morrell, PhD. Your title is so long, Chris, that I couldn't even put it all on the agenda slide. Uh, so along with us to sort of share his story about the U.S. Military Academy, or West Point, known as Army for those watching football and basketball at home, and about their journey on a total cloud transformation. So I'm excited to have them on and talk through that. We're going to go through an intro of sort of getting the main facts around the story, some details on slides that Lieutenant Colonel Morrell put together. And then we're going to do a little bit of sort of interview scenarios where I can drill into some more information. And then towards the end, we will open it up to Q&A. So with that, are you ready to take over, Chris?
Absolutely. All right, I got it. All right, so thanks, Bob. So Chris Morrell. Let me just start by saying this is, Bob introduced this as my story and the things that I did. It is not about me. I've got an incredible team of folks working around me to make this successful. We were very fortunate to have the stars align from a personnel perspective, to have all of the right people in all of the right jobs that really enabled what we've been able to do over the last couple of years. So I'm Lieutenant Colonel Chris Morrell. I am the first CTO at West Point. It's not a role that we've ever had before. We've sort of, like a lot of companies do, we just made it up and we just throw whatever work sounds like is reasonable at it. So I come out of I'm an active duty Army officer. I'm a permanent faculty member at West Point. I was originally a signal officer, and then for those familiar with Army, a functional area 53, and then 26 information systems management. Got my PhD at Virginia Tech. I've been teaching at West Point off and on since 2008, with some breaks here and there. And then over the last few years, moved out of the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science into the CIO G6, where I took over. I've formally been the CTO as my full-time job for just about a year now. So this all started a few years ago. We realized, and we, the leadership at the Academy, realized that the IT environment that we were working in was unsustainable. The Department of Defense's IT mission to secure their IT assets was put at risk by our mission, and the DoD IT mission put us at risk, and we put the DoD at risk. We have to maintain an accreditation. The more they tightened down security controls, the harder it was for us to do what we needed to do, putting our accreditations at risk. And in order for us to get all of the waivers and all of the exceptions to policy to get our students and faculty members the ability to do what they needed to do. It increased the surface area, the vulnerability surface area of West Point or of the DoD Information Network, the DoDIN, and so we put them at risk. So it was mutually beneficial for us to go down this path. So this is what kicked this whole thing off sometime around 2017. So this is where we landed. The solution is the West Point Research and Education Network. It is a contractor-owned, contractor-operated network infrastructure. That's we're now 100% commercial, all the way from the edge of the network into the WAPs and the switch ports on the wall. We landed on Microsoft M365 A5. That's the academic version of the E5 SKU. And the EMS E5 was added on there originally. It's now all of the E5 stuff, I believe, is included in the A5 now. We don't add it as an extra CLIN anymore. It's just, or as an extra line there. It's just there. We're using an Azure AD hybrid identity management solution with Azure AD Connect. We're not using ADFS. We jumped past ADFS into using AD Connect. We were able to build this whole thing as a greenfield deployment. We're using almost 100% Azure compute and storage. We've got a little bit of vCenter still floating around, but we've really put everything into Azure. We are currently working on Microsoft ExpressRoute. We expect that to be lit sometime in the next few weeks. Actually, by the end of May, we expect to have ExpressRoute turned on. And we also went Azure Stack for our on-prem compute and storage to give us that unity of services, that ability to not shift gears when the admins need to move from working on-prem to off-prem. Everything looks and feels the same in Azure Stack. We're using Azure Sentinel as our CM. We're still working on increasing the logs that are getting fed into there, but Sentinel is where we've landed. We sort of entered this whole project saying, what is it that that we can get for free with what we already bought? Why buy another product? MFA is an example. We're pure Azure MFA. We thought about adding on another service, an Okta or a Duo or something else on top of it, but we're looking for the gaps in what we bought before we spend more money and make the solution more complex than it needs to be. And then we have a contracted through the Army, a contracted cybersecurity service provider. They collect our logs, they monitor, they give us alerts, and we do a little bit of that ourselves with Sentinel. So the reason that we landed with this solution is that we can't really get a whole lot bigger. It's hard to hire civil servants, and we just didn't see the sense in hiring a bunch of contractors. So we went the direction of hiring services, and so we're getting some efficiency of the cloud because things are a little bit easier to manage. The time and effort that we spent, for example, maintaining SQL servers, we don't have to do anymore because Microsoft takes care of that for us, and we just have to maintain the databases. So the cloud was imperative to this solution because all of our services, email and web services and everything, lived inside of the old network, the Defense Research and Engineering Network. And we couldn't get to those services from our new network, the new REN network. And so we needed to move all of our services to somewhere that that users could get to from both of those networks. And so the cloud had to be that solution because we needed to make it as seamless as possible for users. We couldn't just shut down operations for a period of time and say, hey, hang on, everybody, we're going to move all of these services. So we started by taking all of our services and move them out to the cloud. And then once the services were up and running, then we were able to move users from the old network to the new network, which we actually just wrapped up this week, in fact. We also had to meet DoD risk management framework security requirements, and so we're still working through RMF. If you're familiar with it, we've got our IATT, our approval to test, and then we expect to have our ATO coming up here in the next our approval to operate coming up here in the next couple of months. We had a big debate internal between going the Google route and going the Microsoft route. And to be perfectly honest, in 2017 and early 2018, when the few of us were just starting to talk about this project, we were all 100% convinced that Google G Suite was where we were going to land. But then as we started to think more and more about it, we considered the fact that there are just things that you can't quite do in G Suite. We have engineering departments that need some of the Excel plugins. We still have requirements to do traditional Word documents, stuff that just can't do in Google. So we were going to end up, still having to pay for Microsoft Office licenses, and it just didn't make sense for us to split that. The other piece of it is that we have, as every organization we have a wide range of user abilities, and so we needed to find something that could cover all of those bases. Something that was fast moving and modern enough that the younger faculty members, the cadets, the ones who are much more agile in their approach to technology, could get what they wanted out of it, but still was comfortable to those who were used to a more traditional IT approach, and that's why we landed on Microsoft 365. Is it really gives you all of that. I can work 100% in the browser if I want. You all know this, right? I'm preaching to the choir here. I can do everything in the cloud, or I can install Word and Outlook and Excel and do everything on my computer, or I can switch from moment to moment, from solution to solution, which is where I personally find myself. Is in the course of a day, I'll work in a browser, on my phone, on my iPad, and in the thick client, all just depending on what it is that I'm working on. So how do we get there? We started in the fall of 2018 with a pilot RFP for just 200 users. We didn't know what this was going to look like. We wanted to confirm that this was going to be the right path for us to go down. So we kicked off an RFP. We hired Planet to come in and do it for us. And we opened up the floodgates. We said, there's nothing disabled, anything goes. You want to create a team, create a team. When you create a team, it ends up in the GAL. Anything, all the applications. And we did a lot of learning. We made sure to include non-technical users. It wasn't just a bunch of nerds. It wasn't just a bunch of nerds playing with toys. We brought in the non-technical users so we could get their feedback as well. And over the course of those 6 weeks, it really informed what things were going to look like as we moved into the future. So what it led us to is those first couple of bullets. We decided, and everybody has their own reasons for it. We decided to leave Yammer at the time because it wasn't a thing, but when it came out, we disabled it, and Sway. We left those turned off mainly because we were trying to ensure that we maintain separation between the students and the faculty, and we just haven't built the governance in yet in a way to enable those. We tightened down who was able to create groups and by extension teams, because with 200 users, and really of those 200 pilot users, about 150 were active. In 6 weeks, we had about 1,000 teams, literally 1,000 teams. And so I suspected that once we rolled that out to all 7,000 users, we were going to have some significant growth and things were going to be a little bit of a mess. So we decided to control that in our IT, with our IT professionals. So each organization has their own organic IT support. They can get a group or a team spun around pretty quickly if they need it. We also decided through that to enforce some naming conventions. So we use an Active Directory property to prepend all of our teams and groups. So it helps keep things a little more organized, a little easier to understand what's going on. Instead of having 1,000 teams named test, at least I know what department is creating all of those test teams. We worked and are continuing to work to define knowledge management. We still got a long ways to go on this, but trying to figure out the governance behind retention and DLP and who's responsible for approving what. We have not enabled data classification yet, but it's on the list of things that we're thinking about. But having somebody help you determine from the top down what the organizational structure looks like, what's your SharePoint structure going to look like, and then what controls are you going to put around all of that. When we did our data migration, we had all of our users do their own migration of their personal data, and that included email and their personal files. So we had a number of different on-prem storage solutions. People were using external USB drives. Some people were using shared drives. There were a couple different flavors of shared drives. We just said, here's OneDrive, here's Outlook in the cloud, go, or here's Exchange, go, move all your stuff. We gave out some guides. We sent them on their way, and we had some users that we had to help, but for the most part, probably 95% of our users, they did that themselves, and we didn't have to do a whole lot to support them. On the organizational data side, we did. This is a task that Planet executed for us. Is they helped us take all of our organizational data from 2 different SharePoint servers and probably 5 or 6 different flat file network shares, and get that all consolidated into SharePoint Online. It took us probably about a year to get that done. I think we probably could have gotten all the way through it in 6 months or less. But we ran into some personnel issues, and the Army being as the Army is, we had people leave in the middle of the project, and but we got there. So where are we now? This past Monday, the 27th of April, we killed the DREN, finally, the Defense Research and Engineering Network, at least at West Point, right? The DREN still exists out there in Army or in DoD land, but it's just not at West Point anymore. We've still got a little bit of cleanup to do on the back end of that, but users aren't using it anymore. We are currently working through tightening our compliance and conditional access controls. We've worked through a plan to slowly, over a period of about 6 weeks, tighten up compliance a little bit more each week. And in fact, tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern, I'm turning on conditional access for Windows and Mac OS. So we're going to cross our fingers and hope that our plan works out well. We're continuing to dig into Sentinel to figure out what it is that we can do with that. We're a pretty small team. I mentioned that earlier. We haven't grown a whole lot. So we're trying to figure out how to leverage a lot of these tools that Microsoft provides in order to be better, do more with less. And then we're continuing to improve business processes. We brought Planet in to help us do a lot of development. So we've had a bunch of different processes get reviewed and code and solutions coded for them. Sometimes the solution isn't an app. Sometimes it's just a new business process. So we've leaned on Planet pretty heavily to help us with that. And then we're doing everything remotely. So the majority of our users are working from home. I've been working from my basement for the last 7 weeks. The cadets outside of a dozen or two are scattered around the country. We were able, because of all of this work, we were able to pretty seamlessly grow into this remote teaching. So I grabbed these two charts so you could see them off of the admin portal. The top one I just filtered because of the scaling. I filtered the top one to just messages. And the bottom one is calls and meetings. And so in that top one, you can see our weeks, right? So each week is about 5 days. If you look carefully, you can pick out President's Day week in there. There's a 4-day week in the middle of February. And then everybody took off for spring break on the week before the 10th of March. And then you can see through that week as things start to ramp up and people are starting to figure out that this is a thing that we're going to have to do. And then all of a sudden that next week, that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, things were getting busy. We were starting to plan. And then on Thursday, that's the highest point on the chat messages, that very first spike. That was the first day of remote teaching classes. And you can see we've maintained this pretty steady usage since then. And then on the bottom chart there, that's just calls and meetings. You can actually see we have what's called a study day. It's a day without classes every week or every other week or so. And so you can see a couple of those dips around the beginning of April. That's a day when there aren't any classes being held. So you can actually see how things have progressed. This chart is so exciting to me just because the effort that my team had to put in at the middle of March was almost zero. We did almost nothing. It just worked because of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years. Yeah, we've had to do some training. We've had a lot of users that were struggling. We've grown and we've learned a lot. But just the preparation, it feels like over the last 2 years, we've been preparing for this exact scenario. So Corey asked a question in the chat about what we're using for voice. We are 100% Teams. We did not enable Skype for Business when we stood this up. We jumped straight into Teams.
And then I think further than that, this is Bob, by the way, for everyone. I think further than that, Chris, you're actually starting to so in your offices, right? You had phones, et cetera. More traditional PBX or IP
Yep.
telephony, but you're actually just starting to pilot, pushing that a little bit further with Teams Voice as well, right? Did you want to talk about that for just a half a sec?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, so we the Network Enterprise Center, they're the IT service provider at most Army installations. So they provide our phone services. It's traditional POTS telephone that everybody has had on their desk forever. And we've known for a while that we want to start to collapse everything into a single set of infrastructure, single set of services. So we started a pilot. It's only 15 users right now, or 15 telephone numbers right now. So we just added the phone system and the dial plan licenses for 15 users. I happen to have in my basement, I just got five different VoIP telephones that are all Teams compatible phones. So we've just started to spin this pilot up, and then we'll probably let it go for a couple of months, and then we'll start to grow the pilot out. But I think we're seeing already that in the long term, it's going to make us a whole lot more efficient. The fact that if I have a phone number behind my Teams account, you can call me and I can be on my cell phone or my computer or my office phone or whatever, wherever, and it's not an issue. You can reach me, which is good and bad, right? That also means that my work follows me everywhere that I go. So what's coming next? So I talked a little bit about ExpressRoute. It's coming, should be by the end of May. We should have it fully implemented. Right now we've got a site-to-site VPN using an Azure gateway between on-prem and the Azure data center. It is not the best solution. If you're thinking about doing something like this and you want that connection between the Azure data center and your on-prem data center. VPN is a little unreliable, and it may just be how we have it configured, but we've been fighting this thing for a while, and we are looking forward to ExpressRoute, because everything I hear about it is that it's going to be way much better. We are constantly pushing towards moving from an IaaS solution to either SaaS or PaaS, depending on what the solution is. If we're going to build some custom code, or we're going to go to a vendor and hire something. Our student information system that maintains grades and attendance and all of the stuff that we have, it's a homegrown solution that runs on about 7 server 2019 IIS servers. We are slowly plucking applications one at a time out of there and moving them into Azure as applications instead of running them inside of a Windows server. I see a future. I hope to see a future someday where the number of servers that my team has to maintain is one hand. But we'll see how long it takes us to get there. We're continuing to refine our policy and procedure. I've learned a lot over this time, and you're not going to get it perfect before you start. You've just got to be flexible as you're moving forward. I mentioned VoIP. We talked a little bit about that. We're talking about how we do remote working and teaching as our a normal thing for us, right? West Point's never been a place where you could do an online degree. There's never been any attempt to do anything outside of traditional classroom teaching. Well, this is changing things for us. And in fact, our dean, Brigadier General Jeb, she has told the faculty, hey, you need to figure out what this means for us in the future. And maybe there's a future where faculty members are required to teach remotely a lesson or 2 or 3 over the course of a semester, just so that we can keep these skills up, because we're finding so many different ways to engage with students that we've never ever been able to do in the past. We're in the Northeast, and in the winter time, sometimes it snows enough that we just can't get to work, and so we have these things called Code Red days where nobody goes to work. Well, people who live off of the West Point installation don't go into work. They essentially they take a sick day. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the case, because what we're finding right now is the vast majority of our employees can work from home. So if I'm a faculty member and I live somewhere where I can't get to the classroom, and maybe it's not that big of a stretch for me to email the cadets and say, hey, join me on Teams for class today. I see a future for us where we no longer run an on-prem Active Directory. I really, really would like us to be 100% cloud. I don't think it happens in the next year, maybe not even in the next 2. But at some point, and I think this is Microsoft's vision too, is at some point the use for Active Directory really goes away. We are putting everything that we can into managing our machines from the cloud. We're all in on Intune, on autopilot for our imaging. We're trying to get away from running traditional images and instead running configurations out of Intune. And then working on refining where our data is at and how to best secure it. So as we've done this migration, people have made do with what they can as they can. So people have data scattered in all sorts of weird places. They're using Teams for what Teams isn't supposed to be for. They're using, they've still got files. I was just helping a user a couple of weeks ago that we found had like an 8 or some odd gigabyte PST on his desktop. And so we helped him figure out that 100 gigabyte mailbox that sits out in the cloud is pretty awesome and always available and backed up. And so when your computer crashes, your email isn't going with it. So if I were going to do this all over again, or if you're thinking about doing what we've done, here are the things that I've learned and my advice that I would offer going into a project like this. Number one, and the most important thing, is get leadership buy-in. And to do that, you have to show value to the leadership. right? It can't just be the nerds hanging out in the back room that are making this happen. If you don't have the boss and the people with the deep pockets completely sold on what you're doing, it is going to be really, really hard for you. So we are very fortunate. The previous superintendent, Lieutenant General Bob Caslin, he's down in South Carolina now. He was all in. Our CIO offered him, sir, this is the plan. This is what we're going to do. He bought in on it, and then he made the calls that he needed to make to get support from all the way up to the civilian leadership at the Department of Army. So pilot the whole solution. Don't just tiptoe in. Just go. Figure it out. Do it as a pilot, right? You don't want to bring everybody, but do everything, and you'll find the things that are unique to your organization that you're going to want to tune and tweak as you start to move into the full implementation. Define a fast change control process. So we have the good fortune from our leadership side, and it's part of that leadership buy-in, is that the CISO and I were enabled to make change control decisions on the fly. So we literally would sit down, he and I would sit down around Azure portal. We would make design decisions and implement them on the spot because we had the trust and the confidence of our leadership that we were gonna get it right. And then we went behind after the fact, documented what we had done, and then we made mistakes, and we've undone those mistakes. There has been a great deal of learning that's happened. One day, I inadvertently logged every one of our users out by changing a policy that I didn't think would do that, but it did. So we learned. Define the difference in usage for your organization between SharePoint Online, Teams, and OneDrive for Business. So for us, the way we approach it is OneDrive for Business, that's your personal work-related data. Teams is for that pre-decisional sort of transient data that isn't going to last a long time. And then SharePoint Online is that permanent archive of data that's going to persist for a long period of time, and then figure out how to enforce that. We're still at the point where we've defined that, and one of the next steps for us is to continue to teach users how to do this correctly, so that when somebody leaves and a team expires and the data disappears, that there aren't a bunch of sad faces, that they get what they still can get to that data. Take an opportunity to leave the garbage behind. So if you've got, we started Greenfield, so we built this whole thing from scratch. We brought some code over, we brought a little bit of data over, but we built our Active Directory structure from scratch. We did not do a trust relationship and move any Active Directory objects. Everything that's in our new network is new. Even our Academy management system, our student information system, we built brand new servers and we just brought the code over. Lean heavily on an implementation partner. So Planet has been an amazing teammate in this project, and I'm sure that the team gets tired of hearing me ask and complain and moan about the things that I wish we could get done. But if it wasn't for their support, there's no way that we would have gotten there. So move as quickly as your organization can reasonably handle. I talk to people that have been working these migrations for years and years, and they're still fighting it, and they have this, they've got a foot in both worlds, and it's really hard to maintain and manage. Move as quickly as you can, and then just cut it off. Just go, and it will hurt a little bit, but it will be better for everybody in the long run. And then overestimate your cloud spend. So we put way more into cloud, our cloud spend than we thought we were going to need, and it's a good thing because we needed more than we thought we were going to need. So that would be the advice that I would give. So that actually wraps up my comments. And so what I'll do is go to the next slide, and then Bob will ask some questions, and then we'll open it up to any questions that anybody else has.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. That was fantastic. And I'm not going to take up too much time, but there's a couple of things that I heard you talk about, and of course, I've been, involved in this thing from the beginning as well, so that sort of sparked some memories and thoughts for me. So one of the reoccurring themes that I heard from you, at least I think I did, was, look, you can't have zero planning, right? That's just reckless, right? But to come up with a plan, go for it and try to drive through it as quickly as you can, right? Rip the Band-Aid off, and it's better to deal with, a level 7 out of 10 pain for 3 weeks than a level 3 out of 10 pain for 6 months, right? But there's one area, there's a couple things. So just confirm and what your thoughts are on that. And then secondly, though, what does that mean for end users? What did you guys do to help, to make sure that part, you didn't just say you're on your own. So what did you guys do there?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I think that more pain over a less period of time is better, because in the long run, users think that we're all heartless anyway. So you make it quick and then let them feel how much better things can be in the long run. We had the good fortune, if you want to call it good fortune. We had the good fortune of coming from a very, very restrictive IT environment. Students, the cadets, were not allowed to get their email on their mobile devices. They were only able to get their email from their government-issued laptops when they used their CAT card, logged onto their machine, VPN'd into the network, and then they could get their on-prem email. And yeah, so just showing them, just giving them a little taste of how good it could be, and things took off. And then really the way we got things moving is we just told them, hey, we're going to shut that service off. We are going to disable the ability for you to send email from the on-prem exchange. I'm not going to make it so you can't get your email. You're not going to lose anything. You're just not going to be able to send email. And we, a little bit at a time, just started taking things away in the old environment until we were at the point where there was just nothing left to take away. And a lot of people don't even realize what they've gone through.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think, look, there's a lot of strategies. There is one little tidbit that I think there's a couple of reasons why ultimately the email migration side is a choice. Because I'm sure if I were listening to this talk, Chris, I might raise my eyebrow about telling users they were going to migrate their own email. But there were some other factors like the ability to sort of connect the two environments. You want to just talk a minute or two about that?
Yeah, sure. So it's funny you mentioned about having users migrate their own email. So in a previous Army job, I did the enterprise email migration for all of Southwest Asia. So all of the Army users spread across Kuwait and the whole CENTCOM area, Middle Eastern part of the world. We moved from the same thing, the on-prem, every post-camping station had their own email, to this enterprise email system that was up in the cloud. And we did it very much the same way. We said, all right, so here's some instructions. Open up Outlook, connect both of your mailboxes, drag and drop, have a nice day. And I think one of the things that we try to remind our users of, and it's a hard thing to remind them of, is they are capable of so much more than they might be willing to admit. We have users. We're trying to get users to use Company Portal for installing software, and so we have the IT support down at the unit level that will come back and say, well, but our users don't know how to do that. But the fact of the matter is most of them have an iPhone or an Android. They can go to the App Store or the Google Play Store and they can install an app. And if you present it to them like that, hey, you can do this on your device, You can do the same thing on a government device. You just have to know that it's a different store you're going to. And so by approaching it that way, we were really able, I think we've been able to slowly convince our users. There are some that won't be convinced, but slowly convince most of our users that they are capable of actually supporting themselves.
Well, so I used to have that. So, a lot of people on the call know I was at Microsoft for a while, and of course, the Microsoft folks come in and tell you this story all the time, right? And I know, in looking at the expressions of the folks sitting on the other side of the desk there's nothing but eye rolling. That's why, I'm so excited to hear a customer say, yeah, we kind of did that, right? And look, everyone's world is a little different, and there might be varying degrees of how far you can push this with your particular audience. You guys had some benefits, like, really getting double to sort of recreate the environment at whole. Not everybody can do that, and some of those things. But the ability to push the boundaries, go a little faster with proper. The one thing that we didn't quite finish off on, by the way, on the previous question, was what did you guys put in place for sort of user education around this?
Yeah, sure. So we did a lot of different things. We did some on-site classes. So we brought actually Planet trainers in to do classes for us. We did OneDrive classes, we did SharePoint classes, we did Teams classes. We did some training for our internal IT support so that they had a little bit more, and then tried to encourage them to don't do everything for the user. Help the user understand what they're doing, and don't be in a hurry to take over the keyboard and the mouse and click for them. Talk them through what they're doing, because you can sort of train them. We also built a help site. You're welcome to go check it out, help.westpoint.edu. And it's not the prettiest site, but it's got a ton of really, really good information on there. Some guides that we built. We also, as part of our purchase from Planet, we bought Evolve 365. So we would give users links to and skill tracks out there and ask them, hey, have you done this training? And often the answer was no. And often the answer was, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. Another thing that we do that sort of started around the beginning of this project is I send an IT update every single Monday afternoon. And it summarizes. I try to keep it as short as I reasonably can. But it usually is the top 4 or 5 things that are happening in the IT world over the next week, and I always end it with a tip of the day or a tip of the week, in hopes that the users that actually read it will get something out of it. So we've given all of these different places that they can get help. And some of them are using it, some of them aren't, some of them are not listening, but they're figuring it out.
Well, and look, here my experience, and I think you're experiencing the same thing, right? If your entire user adoption plan is based on current training on the current thing versus a comprehensive plan that has tentacles everywhere, right? A learning platform of some kind, regular communications, sort of weaving it all in along the way, et cetera, so that you have multiple things. If your current plan is just those trainings, then the next time something significantly happens, which is what, every 60 days or so, you're done, right? So you need to sort of have this comprehensive program. You got a big change now, you need a little more help, but then over time you need to help them drive to be self-learners of some kind with some nudging from communications and IT.
Yep, that's absolutely right, and it's just reminding people that we're here and we're trying to help, and again, back to that, we're coming from this very restrictive IT environment. It's easy to look good when the previous system was so bad.
Yeah, you had a low bar to try to overcome, didn't you? Not through any fault of you guys, right? So there's really only one more thing that I want to talk about before we open it up to Q&A, because I think it's something that you guys did right and something that we at Planet often recommend, but not everybody sort of has, you know, wants to invest the time to do this. But I think this is partially why you were able to successfully get through the entire data migration. So talk a little bit about how you guys, so part of the process we had was that there was a team of folks that went out to each of the departments, business units, whatever the term you want to use for your organization, um, and interview them about their data, how they use it, how they collaborate, and what their business processes are. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we had a team of folks, including some SharePoint admins and some project managers, and they would go to each organization and talk about where do you have all of your data stored, how do you use your data, how is your organization organized, and sort of help coach them through the Microsoft hub spoke SharePoint model, and then would iterate their design with them. They would come back and say, this is what we think it looks like, and then we would go back to them and say, well, but what if you did this different or did that different? And so doing that sort of iterative design, on what the SharePoint architecture is going to look like for their organization, and then helping coach them through all of their data sources and where it's going to go, and then how to use that new tool in an appropriate way. We executed a list, or we created this list of, I think it was 13 migration steps, and we would work through each organization. We built a SharePoint site, and each organization would work through those 13 steps a little bit at a time. And we missed some organizations, then we came back and we played catch up, and we got them along. We got them all caught up. But the other key part of that is that it wasn't just IT folks in the room. You've heard me say this a couple of times, is it can't just be about IT. It has to be about organizational leaders. And that goes to all of this stuff. It goes to, if you're going to fund this thing, you need leadership support to fund this thing. If you're going to get people to actually commit to doing the training, to actually making this the system of record, to actually making this a priority in their already busy days, you have to have the support of the leadership to actually get it done. And so we would sometimes have to reach past the people that we were working with to organizational leadership and say, hey, we really need your organization to do their part, or you're going to end up losing data, missing opportunities, being behind. We spent a lot of time just selling what we were doing to people.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So we're getting close on time. I definitely want to open up to some questions. There's one actually in the queue already in the chat, so we can start with that. But folks, if you afterwards, you can either type the question in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and ask, and I'll try to referee that as best as I can. But the first question was, what areas caused the overrun in cost? That might have been talking about the Azure cloud spend stuff, I think.
Yeah, the comment about overestimating your cloud spend. So things are more expensive in the cloud, right? You don't go to the cloud to save money. You go to the cloud to gain efficiencies, to be faster, to be more agile, to be more accessible, to be more secure. You don't go there to save money. So we just didn't really know what things were going to cost. We had some guesses. We used the Azure calculators, but we wanted the freedom to just sort of do whatever. And so when we planned this out, we knew that a lot of our servers were not going to go to the cloud. So we were gonna retire all of our SQL servers, and we were going to go to SQL as a service or SQL managed instances in the cloud. We knew that was going to be cheaper for us, but we estimated when we did our projections, we said, just assume everything on-prem is going to be off-prem. And that really gave us sort of a buffer, a comfortable buffer where we didn't have to really worry about any cost overruns. Another mistake that we made was, and it's a funny one, and I just don't know how we made it, is we miscounted our users. So we bought 750 too few licenses when we kicked this thing off. Because we went off of our organizational TDA. So the Army has a document that says this is how many people are assigned to you. We took that document and we added a few percentage points to it. And we said, this is how many licenses we need. And then when it came down to it, we kept onboarding people. And we got to this point where we're like, oh no, we don't have enough licenses. So we had to pull some of that extra money that we had put into Azure to bump up our license count to finish our migration. It's also something that slowed us down. We would have been done probably a month or two sooner had we not made a couple of mistakes like that.
So are there anybody out there that has some questions for Chris? Thanks, Chris.
Where did end users struggle the most? Let's see. That's an interesting question. I think it's so our users, it depends on which users you're talking about. So we have a pretty big variance in our users. If you talk cadets, they were very quick to pick up cloud, right? Most of them have come out of high school where they're doing, Google Classrooms, or lots of schools are doing O365, or they're doing some sort of cloud something. So the cadets didn't struggle a whole lot. But the staff and faculty, I think the biggest shift that a lot of them had was honestly moving to a new way of doing multi-factor authentication. So being part of the Department of Defense, people get used to the CAT card and PIN. And we made a conscious decision early on that we were going to not use the CAT card and PIN as we moved through this. And so convincing people that they should install Microsoft Authenticator on their phone. They should use that instead of the phone call for the authentication. We disabled text messages, so it's NIST recommend. It's deprecated by NIST. It's recommended not to do the text message MFA. But we did the phone call and the app, the Authenticator app. But just convincing people that they should install this Authenticator app on their phone, and that Big Brother wasn't going to snoop on what they were doing, and then teaching them how to make this stuff work, I think was one of the hardest things to get them through. And I guess actually, while I'm thinking about it, another big one is just file management. So people in the government that have used government SharePoint know that they don't like SharePoint because it's not flexible. You can't do anything with it, and convincing people that new SharePoint in the cloud is not the same as old SharePoint is a hard thing. It's a hard thing to do. So fortunately, with OneDrive Sync, it makes some of those people who don't want to work in SharePoint, that only want to work in flat file storage, it makes it a little bit easier for them to do that.
Yep, there's a couple more in the queue. One's really quickly. So I'll just address it. Yes, we can make the PowerPoint of this meeting. We also will send out a link to the entire recording. So whichever one works for you is fine. The next one, Chris is asking about GIS services, which I don't think you have, but
so we do have in our Department of Geography and Environmental Engineering, they do use some GIS for teaching. We did not move the GIS data to the cloud because it's so big. It's not really suitable for putting into SharePoint. We ended up building some servers for them in our Azure stack, our on-prem, our hybrid cloud Azure instance, and then just did some file shares out of that they were able to use.
Yeah, and just to add on to that quick, we do have some customers that definitely have moved it to the cloud. so that is out there. But obviously everybody, it's how much you use it and what you do. They have been primarily for state and local governments that are doing significant use where they have significant infrastructure to support it, and so they found savings there.
Yeah, and so for us, it's not significant use. For us, it's really the exfil of huge amounts of data every semester by all of the cadets that are taking this class. It just didn't make sense for us from a financial aspect to do it that way.
Yeah, and so one other one I think is a pretty quick one for looks like someone who's sort of one of the DoD brethren of yours that are on the call ask about just because of their name the ask about the documented governance. Would you be willing to share any of that, depending on obviously on who they are?
Yeah, absolutely. So feel free to shoot me an email and I'll get you linked up with the right people to get you what you're looking for. I've recognized a few names on here. So DAU, we're helping coach them a little bit through what they're doing. We've been doing a little coaching with Army War College to help them. It's funny. I remember early on in this project where we were the ones that were asking everybody for help, and it feels a little weird to be in this place where we're now the one who's done this and now is being asked for help. It's a little bit of a strange feeling.
And so we have about a minute or so left. There's one more question sitting in the queue, and it says post implementation. Do you feel you have positively impacted overall security?
I absolutely guarantee that we have, and I'll give you one simple for instance that we had. So we had a user, and it happens regularly, right? We had a user click on a malicious link. We got an alert. Our cyber team called the person. They said, "Yep, I accidentally clicked on that link." We reset the password, all within about 15 minutes, right? Cyber did the rest of their investigation, but all within about 15 minutes. In our old system where we were allegedly more secure, we wouldn't have even known that click would have happened. We would not have had any idea until who knows how far down the road. So absolutely, I can definitively say without question that we are both more secure and more accessible than we were before this.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. If you've got another couple of minutes, Chris, there's one more question in the queue.
Yeah, I got time.
So did you research any other SIM solutions?
So we have looked at a few. We went to the Navy War College. They have a guy who is some kind of crazy Splunk genius out there, and so we looked at what he was doing. We thought about it. Inside of one of the things that we have going for us is we're a university, and so we have a bunch of really, really smart people. And we have a cyber research center that has a bunch of really, really smart cyber people with a lot of experience and a lot of different solutions. So yeah, we did look at a few, but it comes back to that statement I made earlier about finding the gaps in what we can't do with what we already purchased. And what we haven't been able to do yet is identify things that we can't do with Azure Log Analytics, Data Explorer, Sentinel, tie all those pieces together. We haven't found anything that we can't do that we wish we could to really make it worth the time and effort and money and increased complexity to bring in another solution. Although I am finding that there are some things that I wish I could do, and I'm working through some solutions. So one for instance is Log Analytics only maintains 30 days of history, and so I've been working on integrating an Azure Data Explorer database with an Event Hub with Log Analytics, so that I can get Azure Active Directory audit and sign-in logs over into Data Explorer, and then keep more history. So keep 90 to 120 days of sign-in and audit data.
So with that, there's no more questions in the queue. There's going once, twice, 3 times for any last questions for Chris and the team. And if not, I want to thank everybody for joining us this month. I think this was a great session. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Morrell, just to be formal, for joining us. I think this was really insightful and applicable regardless of your circumstances, right? Not you're a little bit of a niche circumstance in per se, right? But I think the lessons that you learn and experiences are completely transferable to most of our customers. So thanks for joining us. And with that, everybody have a great week.
Absolutely. And if I can be of any help to anybody else, reach out to Bob or anybody at the Planet team. They can get you my contact information, and I'm happy to help.
Thanks so much for the offer, Chris.
Absolutely.